protests storming the Capitol there, the State House. She's very close to Governor Whitmer there, and we know the threats there that the governor has endured. And there is a strong Michigan contingent, we've been told by law enforcement, to some of the groups who are here today. In any case, the defiance of Debbie Dingell, who has a very good check on the pulse of her fellow Democratic caucus members, is, I think, very, very widespread. We heard this earlier from the senators, according to Pete Williams, who was reporting that they also want to get this done tonight. And I think they're going to try to do it no matter how late they stay up. And as you well know, I covered the Hill. When they have deadlines and they have big business to do at the end of a session, they do stay all night. Healthcare was passed at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, and law enforcement seems to be attempting to clear the deck so that that can take place. We'll keep an eye on that. Keep working your sources, Andrea. I want to turn to Republican Congressman Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma, who is still at the Capitol and locked down in his office. Sir, first of all, I'm glad to see that you're okay and you're able to call in. What was your experience today?
Well, first of all, there wasn't any shots that was fired in the House chamber. I know guns were drawn. I was right there when they broke the glass. It did sound like gunshots. And for those that haven't heard it, and which I'm glad a lot of people haven't heard gunshots like that, unfortunately I have. I recognized it immediately, and there was definitely tear gas, so the tear gas was in the room. Nothing biased. Listen, it was very tense. It should never happen at all. But our Capitol Police and the Sergeant of Arms, law enforcement did a phenomenal job showing restraint and actually keeping the members safe. These guys have families too, and they did their best to protect us. They were strongly outnumbered, which is why I stood there with them, and we made sure that the chamber was completely clear. The members got out, the staff got out, and at the end of the day, the protesters were completely, and I actually want to use the word agitator. So agitators were completely out of line.
Yeah, and Congressman, I mean, you're a Republican, you're a Trump supporter, and as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were someone who was wanting to object to certifying the elector. So we know where you stand politically. This seems to me is a different issue. You're talking about people breaking the law, coming into the United States Congress and stopping the business of America. Do you feel that what the president said today to those protesters in his tweet and in his video message, is it enough, or do you think that he's still in some way fanning the flames by contending that it's a stolen election?
Listen, the people are responsible for their own behavior. First and foremost, you can't blame this on the president or anybody else. You're responsible for your own behavior, full stop. And the president told him to go home, and even he said, I love him. And people are trying to criticize him for saying he loved them, but I wake up every single morning and I say, love the people, love the call. And I love these guys too. And doesn't mean I condone what they did. I went and I talked to a whole bunch of law enforcement that they have a triage center set in the basement of one of our office buildings, and if I said there was 25 or 50 of them, I'd probably be underestimating. And I shook every one of their hands. I told them, thank you. Every one of these guys had families. Every one of these guys, or for the most, some of them had families. Most of them were married with kids. And they were shaken up. They were shaken up quite a bit. One young man, unfortunately, is probably going to lose his eye, and because he got hit with some object. And I asked him. I said, what happened? And every one of them told me the same thing. Said these separated from the protesters. These guys had evil in their eyes when they came after us. The rest of the protesters continued on the way. These guys broke away. They were there as agitators. And when they started breaking the glass out, I even confronted them at the door, and I said, guys, because I started yelling, don't shoot, don't shoot. And I hollered at the guys at the other side. I said, you almost got shot. You almost got shot. Are you serious? Are you willing to do this? And most of them calmed down a little bit. One of them, he was the agitator. He was the one that was probably the one that got most of them stirred up. Of course, he kept running his mouth, and he's just unreasonable. He's one of the guys you can't be unreasonable, or you can't reason with. But we're all, at the end of the day, we have the right to protest, but we don't have the right to destroy public or private property. We don't have the right to go this far, and you should feel strong and be willing to stand your ground for what you believe in. I believe you have a right to do that, but this is not the America. I've seen this overseas. This is not what we do inside the United States, and this went too far.
Yeah, no question about it. The pictures tell the story. I mean, when you think about now, many of your colleagues have said and communicated that they want to see this process go forward. They want the Congress to perform its duty.
Agreed.
As mentioned, you were one who was going to object to the electors. Is there anything about what has transpired today that makes you reassess that? Not because of perhaps the substance, I mean, whatever your reasons were, those haven't changed, but just because of the tenor and the powder keg that has been unleashed, and people can lay blame where they want to lay blame, but is there anything about what has transpired that makes you think, you know what, it's time to get on with it? Our position has been known, but this country needs to get on with the peaceful transition.
We're still in the conversation, and I still feel very strongly about our stance. I still believe that there's some real questions about the constitutional authority, about some changes that happened in some of the states, and no question about that. And so there's still going to be some electoral votes that are contested too. We have to get on with our work, but and the demeanor to which we present or the findings may change. And we're still discussing that. We're actually having open discussions among all of us, among both sides right now. But we will move forward with the process. And at the end of the day, this is to make sure that we do have fair and balanced elections, that we have elections moving forward. So anytime we have future elections, what separated us from other democracies is people had faith and they believed in their vote and their election, and they were fair. And that belief isn't there. But what happened today, what transpired today, is no excuse for that. There is no excuse for what happened today, zero. And as I said, there was a lot of peaceful protesters. A lot of them came in from Oklahoma that I knew, and they were all headed home. They weren't part of this. This was a separate group. These were agitators that came there to make as much destruction as possible.
You know, and it's one of those things, because there are, you can, I mean, politics is all about passion and passion for what you believe. And I always say, you know, if you're not protesting, I mean, that's what America's all about. People fought and died for that right.
Right.
But when you...
The First Amendment, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. But when you fan the flames, you know, sometimes you can unleash an element that isn't responsible, that are rioters and agitators. And I guess that's kind of where I'm asking you, you know, whether you feel that there has been rhetoric that's irresponsible, that
there's been rhetoric on both sides. The rhetoric's been irresponsible on both sides. We've seen it from both sides. I mean, there's been some really big flames that were flamed, that was fanned before President Trump even got into office. But before he was even sworn into office, there was a lot of it going on. We've seen these protests go on, and it's been bubbling. It hasn't been from our side. And that's why I said I have a hard time believing these are actual true Trump supporters, because you haven't seen this from Trump supporters. Trump supporters have been out there too. They've been on the streets. They've been to rallies. They've had conflict with Antifa and the other groups. And it has never went to this point. This is the first time we've ever seen it go to this point. And as I said before, it doesn't make any difference who's fanning the flames. At the end of the day, we are all responsible for our own action. And the way you choose to act is you should be held responsible for. And I hope everybody that came in there is held responsible, because a lot of people's lives have changed. There's a lot of law enforcement, a lot of Capitol Police and DC Police and Sergeant of Arms that came to work today that's going to go home a little bit different. There's a young lady that died because she stormed through the door in an office, tried to make a split decision, and had to shoot her. And guess what? Their families' lives have changed. His life got changed because the first time you discharge a weapon, it changes you. It changes you, and it changes you forever. And unfortunately, there's some people out there that's lost a loved one too, a daughter, a mother. I don't know how old she was, but there's a family that's going to grieve tonight because of what got out of hand, and it should have never ever got to this point. This is a dark day for all of us, and I hope we can all take a deep breath and learn something from this. But we still need to be passionate. You have a right to be passionate about what you believe politically, but we can debate in a better manner than this.
We can. We're better than this. Congressman Mullen, we're glad you're safe. Thank you for your time this evening, sir. Be safe and keep us posted on the plan as Congress tries to get about the business of the American people. And let me turn to Kristen Welker. Kristen, I don't know if we've caught up since the president issued his last tweet. What was the thinking behind that? What are you hearing from the senior officials inside the White House tonight?
Well, Savannah, the tweet comes after a number of senior officials here have been pushing him to go further than that video statement that he released earlier today when he again reiterated the false claims of voter fraud, but did urge these protesters, the mob that gathered outside the Capitol, to be peaceful, not to engage in any violence. And so this tweet seems to be the opposite of what some of his top officials were urging him to do, which was to come out and make a statement point blank and say, stand down. This tweet does what he did at the rally, which is to reiterate those false claims, saying, remember this day forever. It is worth noting it has now been flagged by Twitter saying that it could incite more violence. So that is the backdrop against which we are seeing that tweet come out. So I would anticipate, Savannah, that you are going to continue behind the scenes here to have a number of his top aides try to push him to say more and, quite frankly, to do more. I can tell you that the world is watching. In fact, we're just seeing a tweet come out from Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, who says Canadians are deeply disturbed and saddened by the attack on democracy in the United States, our closest ally and neighbor. So people are watching what is happening as it unfolds here, Savannah, and frankly, cannot believe what they are seeing unfold in the nation's capital here in the United States. Now, let me just take a step back and give you a sense of the thinking as this day began. I spoke with a number of top officials who said, look, they saw this as the president and his supporters' last stand, what was going to happen inside the halls of Congress, to air that debate and the dispute that they felt needed to be had about the electoral vote count. They wanted to try to They convinced President Trump that this was, in fact, his last stand, and the hope was that after today, he would be able to move forward. There wasn't a lot of optimism that he would essentially abandon his rhetoric, but that supporters would feel as though at least the debate had been had in the halls of Congress. But White House officials acknowledging privately, look, he has lost, and that ultimately he's going to have to acknowledge that. Savannah.
Right, and we just got a statement from Senator Romney that was posted, and let me just read a little part of it. He said, "What happened at the U.S. Capitol today was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States. Those who choose to continue to support his dangerous gambit by objecting to the results of a legitimate democratic election will forever be seen as being complicit in an unprecedented attack against our democracy." The statement of Senator Mitt Romney earlier today, and you can just imagine behind closed doors those senators that are sheltering in place together, senators who disagree and have found themselves in this situation. You can imagine the conversations that might be going on there. Casey Hunt, our Capitol Hill correspondent, the more pressing conversation is what's next? How can they continue this work that was supposed to take place January 6th, the certifying of the electoral vote? Can it continue tonight? Will it continue tonight?
The short answer, Savannah, is that members are determined that it will. The logistics of this are still being finalized because obviously we've never been in this situation before, but this has been the focus of the conversations. There's an expectation that they may be able to get back into the Senate chamber sooner rather than later. There's a push from Republican leadership, Mitch McConnell, to do that, to show that they will not be cowed by what happened today, by people invading the U.S. Capitol in what both Mitt Romney and the former President George W. Bush called an insurrection. That's a pretty specific choice of words. To top Republicans, obviously not supporters of President Trump based on all of this. But there is that determination to make this happen. Now, it's possible it won't actually be on the Senate floor. We obviously are dealing with the security situation there, sweeping all of the nooks and crannies there, all of the people that were in here. It takes time, and obviously no one wants to go into an unsafe situation. So there have been some different discussions of how to make this happen, but I think certainly the people that I am texting with, talking to, are confident they're going to find some way to demonstrate to the American people that the business of the Congress is going to go on, even in spite of all of this. Savannah.
Casey Hunt. Thank you so much. Our coverage continues as we look at Washington, D.C. tonight on a night like no other. The United States Capitol is locked down. Protesters stormed the building today, stopping the business of Congress at a critical moment. moment when under the Constitution they're to certify the electoral vote of the election and ensure the peaceful transfer of power. We are going to turn over our coverage. NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt just ahead. Stay with NBC as we continue to cover this breaking story throughout the night.
This is an NBC News special report.
And breaking news tonight, the deadly siege on Congress as an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol. We've seen shocking images of chaos, rioters rushing past barricades and police up the Capitol steps, forcing their way inside. Both the House and the Senate evacuated. Lawmakers moved to safe locations. The invaders roaming the abandoned Senate floor, one hanging from the balcony. Police with guns drawn inside the House. The violence erupting. One woman fatally shot outside the Capitol. Improvised explosive devices found. Several people injured. Offices vandalized. Windows smashed. The National Guard called in to quell the unrest, with that city now under curfew. The breach abruptly halting a joint session of Congress just as Republicans launched a last-ditch effort to overturn President-elect Biden's victory in the Electoral College. This unrest breaking out just after President Trump spoke at a rally near the White House, stoking the crowd by falsely claiming he won the election. Later, in a taped message, the president still baselessly saying the election was stolen, but telling rioters to go home. All of it coming just as Democrats win control of the Senate after the historic election in Georgia. A lot to talk about as we continue our rolling coverage. I want to welcome you back to NBC News coverage of the siege at the U.S. Capitol. Right now, police in Washington enforcing a curfew, driving rioters from the streets and Capitol grounds after securing the inside from those pro-Trump intruders who occupied the Capitol for several hours. Officials telling us a short time ago that one person shot inside the Capitol by law enforcement has died. All this taking place as the House and Senate met to formally count the certified electoral ballots that will make Joe Biden the next president. Our Casey Hunt is on Capitol Hill. Casey, bring us up to date.
Lester, just absolutely stunning images today here at the Capitol as protesters overran the Capitol and multiple law enforcement agencies had to be called in after a number of them not only breached the building, but breached the very floor of the House and of the Senate as they were conducting this business of trying to count the electoral college votes. Normally, a very straightforward process that only takes about a half an hour, that would name Joe Biden as president-elect. This, of course, occurring after President Trump held a rally with tens of thousands of people outside of the White House, and the images inside the building were pretty unreal. There were protesters that were on the walls of the Capitol, as well as gunshots at one point. Watch. Tonight, stunning images as rioters supporting President Trump overrun the Capitol. Scuffling with police. On the floor of the House, officers with guns drawn. With protesters just outside the door. Here you see rioters trying to break down a door, and you hear a gunshot. Over in the Senate, protesters breaching what's supposed to be the highly secure Senate floor, abruptly stopping the counting of electoral votes. Some taking photos on the Senate dais. Others shouting and pushing past officers to get inside. Elsewhere, this man sitting with his feet up behind a desk in Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office. Police placing the Capitol on lockdown.
A riot was declared. It was clear that the crowd was intent on causing harm to our officers by deploying chemical irritants on police.
Members of Congress rushing to take shelter. Some wearing gas masks.
We were just told that there has been tear gas in the rotunda, and we're being instructed to each of us get gas masks that are under our seats.
It began just after that massive pro-Trump rally. Tens of thousands gathering near the White House to protest the expected declaration of Joe Biden's electoral college victory.
There is the American flag, and beneath it, these crowds of people now who have stormed, trying to make their wishes known.
The group then marching to the Capitol. Many just standing on the steps outside. Others wandering in the rotunda. Some scaling down the building. At one point, an armed standoff. Police say one person was shot. Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger describing to us how she got out of the building.
There were people banging on the door. Or the floor of the House of Representatives. It's just multiple efforts for us to be able to make our way safely, and then to part the Capitol. It's deeply disturbing what we saw at the U.S. Capitol today.
Top House Republican Kevin McCarthy condemning what he was seeing.
This is so un-American. I condemn any of this violence. This is not the American way. This is not protected by the First Amendment. This must stop.
multiple Democratic and Republican lawmakers urged President Trump to appear on camera to tell the protesters to leave. Instead, he later tweeted, "I'm asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful, no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue." The president-elect then imploring President Trump to speak.
At their best, the words of a president can inspire. At their worst, they can incite. And therefore, I call on President Trump to go on national television now to fulfill his oath and defend the Constitution and demand an end to this siege.
By about 4:15 this afternoon, this message from the White House.
This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you.
See, that statement not going far enough for many on Capitol Hill tonight.
That's right, Lester. Many Republicans urging the president to go farther in trying to ensure calm, to calm this situation down, and to make it easier to have a peaceful transfer of power to Joe Biden. Lester.
All right, Casey Hunt, thank you. And one of those caught in today's assault was Congressman Mike Gallagher, a Wisconsin Republican. He joins us tonight on the phone. First of all, Congressman, are you someplace safe and well?
I am. Yeah, we're kind of sheltering in place here, but I honestly never thought I'd be barricading the doors and watching what I saw happen today in the U.S. Capitol.
Yeah, I mean, some of the images are stunning, and you saw them firsthand. Can you walk us through what happened? I know the Senate and House had split apart for the purposes of debating some objections. When did you realize something was amiss?
Well, it was almost simultaneous with the debate over the certification of Arizona's electors when the protesters started to gather at the foot of the Capitol, and things quickly descended into violence. You know, you heard multiple flashbangs being deployed, which was presumably the Capitol Police trying to get the protesters to back off. The protesters were violently clashing with the police. Earlier in the day, one of the buildings had been evacuated when protesters breached the perimeter, and then somehow they breached the security perimeter of the Capitol itself, and they started breaking and windows were running amok in Statuary Hall, eventually got into the Senate floor and the House floor, and then, you know, the vice president was evacuated by Secret Service, and then someone was shot. And it's my understanding that person has died. I mean, that is the cost of what has happened today. I mean, someone died in the United States Capitol in America today. I mean, this is like acceptable. And I think, if nothing else, the objectors need to stop playing this dangerous game. We need to reconvene tonight when order is restored. The objectors need to stand down. We need to certify the results of the election, and Donald Trump is ultimately going to have to concede that the only way we avoid stuff like this in the future, as a Republican, it bums me out that we lost the presidential election, but such is life. When you lose, you take a second. You look in the mirror and you figure out how you can get better next time, and that's what we need to do with the party right now.
So, Congressman, it appears that they've secured the Capitol now, but that doesn't change the belief in the people we're seeing here that this election was somehow stolen, and the president probably didn't help things today by his remarks. So where does that leave us tomorrow and the next day?
Well, I think the prudent move, once we all say together that the election's over, and we support the peaceful transition of power, is not dismiss the concerns of election fraud that we've seen in multiple states. I think many states, including my own state of Wisconsin, need their state legislatures to do a version of what Florida did after the 2000 election. There were certainly changes that were made at the last second in the midst of the pandemic. And we had a massive increase in absentee balloting, and I think it's fair for the legislatures to take a step back and say, here's what worked, here's what didn't work, and here's how we can give our citizens confidence in the integrity of the election. But that's a separate question than the question of whether Congress should or even has the authority to overturn the result of the state election. I mean, I don't see a reading of that anywhere in the Constitution. That is a recipe for chaos. It's certainly not a conservative reading of the Constitution. It's a highly progressive one. And I just don't believe the federal government should have that power. That power belongs to the states and to the people.
Congressman Mike Gallagher, we're glad you're well. Well, thank you for spending a few minutes with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
As you heard, all this happened as Congress was in the middle of certifying, not actually certifying, the votes had been certified, but they were counting the Electoral College vote for President-elect like Joe Biden and debating objections to that vote. Let's get more on that from NBC's Kristen Welker.
Those stunning images of a mob storming the Capitol followed another extraordinary moment.
Madam Speaker, members of Congress,
Vice President Mike Pence presiding over the special session of Congress in which the electoral votes are counted and the winner of the presidential election declared. And for the first time, Pence publicly breaking with the president.
Are you going to overturn the election results today?
Refusing the president's demands that he unlawfully overturn electoral votes for Biden. Pence releasing a letter saying, "My oath to support and defend the Constitution constrains me from claiming unilateral authority to determine which electoral votes should be counted and which should not." That letter released just minutes after President Trump called out Pence multiple times.
Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us.
At a massive rally across from the White House.
So I hope Mike has the courage to do what he has to do. And I hope he doesn't listen to the rhino and the stupid people that he's listening to.
Later tweeting, Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done. Today again, pushing false claims of widespread fraud.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved.
And today, for the first time, top Senate Republican Mitch McConnell blasting the president and those rejecting Joe Biden's electoral college win.
This election were overturned by mere allegations from the losing side. Our democracy would enter a death spiral.
Still, at least 13 Republican senators and dozens of House Republicans were poised to raise objections to the results in at least 6 states, unless the commission is created to audit the election.
What does it say to the nearly half the country that believes this election was rigged if we vote not even to consider the claims of illegality and fraud in this election?
But shortly after the debate began, those protesters started storming in. And shortly after that moment, all the debate ended. They were going alphabetically through the states, and they've never made it past Arizona. Lester.
Kristen, we're hearing some in the White House are now asking the president to make a more forceful statement. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's absolutely right, Lester. I can tell you that some top White House staff are urging the president to respond strongly to what transpired today. Now, officials don't know if he's actually going to say anything else or issue a more forceful statement. And some Trump allies outside the White House are frustrated with his reluctance to do so. They had wanted him to go further in his remarks and to say something live, not what he released on tape. But the president is hesitant to aggressively push back against his own supporters.
All right,
Lester.
Kristen Welker at the White House. Thank you. President-elect Joe Biden forcefully condemned today's assault. He called on President Trump to step up and demand an end to the siege. Our Jeff Bennett joins us now. Jeff, what else did Mr. Biden have to say? Hey, Lester.
The president-elect condemned the actions of the rioters as an insurrection, saying their behavior bordered on sedition. He also called out President Trump for inciting the violence, and Biden also talked about the challenges ahead. Take a look.
The work of the moment and the work of the next 4 years must be the restoration of democracy, of decency, honor, respect, the rule of law. Just plain, simple decency.
Now, in recent weeks, we've seen Joe Biden increasingly step into this apparent leadership void, delivering addresses to the nation about the pandemic, about the tough economy, and now this crisis in our democracy. And asked by reporters, Biden said he wasn't concerned about his own safety, his own security, or even his own inauguration, which is set to happen at the U.S. Capitol outside. In 2 weeks' time.
Again, a lot of conversation about that in light of what has happened here. All right, Jeff, thank you. And we noted that curfew now in Washington, police have been working to disperse the rioters from the Capitol and the area. Gabe Gutierrez is on the ground for us there. Gabe, what's the latest? Are people beginning to move along and disperse?
Lester, it's an extremely eerie scene out here, out in front of the Capitol. Earlier, there was all this chaos. Now it is extremely quiet. As we were coming here a short time ago, driving through this area and walking through this area, we heard loudspeakers blaring that a curfew was in effect. A great deal of National Guard members were also here, and they were also on very high alert. Lester, it's incredible to see the Capitol just like this as night falls. The question will be, will there be more protesters that stick around? But at this point, I can tell you, as you can see from the street behind me, people have emptied out. There doesn't appear to be a lot of negotiating with some of these rioters inside the Capitol as they were trying to make their way in. He said it was just an incredible sight, un-American, and so many people around the country right now are asking, how could this happen? How could these rioters be allowed to breach the walls of the United States Capitol? But again, right now, a curfew is in effect and the streets are quiet. Lester?
All right, Gabe, thank you very much. Let's turn to Republican Congressman Mark Wayne Mullen.
of Oklahoma is on the phone as well. Congressman, thank you for being well. I assume that you're someplace now safe.
Yes, sir. We're all in good standings.
As we noted, the Senate and House have split apart to begin dealing with some of these objections. You yourself have objected to some of the state certifications. Will that process now end as the approval of the vote resumes?
You know, I think you've heard a different tone from both sides. We should be. I mean, everybody is responsible for their own actions. We can also learn to debate better than this. And at the end of the day, we still have a constitutional authority with the electoral vote for January 6th. And so as soon as the perimeter is secure, I believe we'll be going back to work.
Will you drop your objections?
No, the objection is still there. To contest the election. Acceptable from anybody. I don't care what your reason is. This is never acceptable.
Do you think your actions, those of others who have challenged these electoral votes, in some way help fuel what played out today?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. That's almost ridiculous. It's because we've heard both sides have real bad rhetoric for 5 years. We've seen protests going on for 5 years. And to be quite honest, we've never seen this from Trump supporters before. They've been out there, they've confronted, they've had interactions with the DDA and other groups before. We've had Trump rallies, we've seen them have rallies before, and we've never seen violence. We've never seen this before. Not from Trump supporters, and so I wouldn't even call this really protesters. There was organizers that went into the protesters. I had the opportunity to go and visit with a lot of our men and women that stood guard, that were putting their life on the line to make sure that members and staff gets to go home safe at some point. And they had families too. And I went down to the triage center, and there might have been 25 or 50 of them, I don't know, but they were bloody and bruised, and one young man, I'm sure, is going to lose his eye. And they were shaken up. And I asked them what happened, and they said there was a group that broke away from the protesters, and they had evil in their eyes. These weren't just your normal protesters. They had evil in their eyes, and there wasn't just one or two or three of them that said to me. There was multiple ones that I talked to, and but at the end of the day, we are all responsible for our own actions, regardless. We're responsible for our behavior. And I think President Trump did a good job by telling them to go home, and he even told them that he loved them. And a lot of people want to make a big deal about that, but listen, every morning I wake up and I say, love the people, love the call. I love these people too. But what they did today was inexcusable, and unfortunately, the young lady lost her life because of it. And there's two lives that changed it. The officer that discharged his weapon, I don't care who you are, the person who discharged your weapon, it takes a part of you, and there's going to be, and so his life is going to change. And there's some people that love that young lady. I don't know her age. But I know she. Thank you, sir.
The world is watching as these chaotic scenes play out. A number of world leaders calling on President Trump to condemn the violence. Richard Angle is in London with a global reaction. Richard, it was fascinating to hear some of the things coming from overseas, the kind of things that have come from this country and other times.
Well, by now, Lester, there have been dozens of reactions from world leaders, and they have been condemning what is happening. There have been expressions of shock, expressions of horror, and they are all saying that this was an attack on democracy. Here in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson tweeted out that it is now vital that there should be a peaceful and orderly transfer of power. Germany's foreign minister said the enemies of democracy will be pleased at these unbearable images. The leader of the Secretary General of NATO, the world's most powerful military alliance, said that shocking scenes in Washington, the outcome of this democratic election must be respected. And around the world, leaders were placing blame directly on President Trump. The Prime Minister of Sweden tweeted out that, just one more, President Trump and many members of Congress have a great responsibility for what is happening now. A spokesman for the President of South Africa simply tweeted, "Pray for America."
All right, Richard, thank you. I want to turn now to our Frank Thorpe, who's also at the Capitol. He tweeted some stunning video of intruders rolling free on the Senate floor today. Frank, tell us some of the things you've seen and observed.
Yeah. Lester, I mean, I just have to say, I cannot stress enough what a stunning and surprising and shocking scene it was to walk into the gallery above the Senate floor and see the dozen or so rioters who had made it onto the Senate floor. The Senate floor is one of the most historic places that handles the legislative work for senators, and it is incredibly locked down. Not only is the Capitol locked down, there are multiple levels of security to get into the Capitol every day, but the Senate chamber, the Senate floor, is one of
the most sacred rooms in the Capitol, and to see these rioters on the floor was a stunning situation. I have to say, Lester, one of the things that I've been told by aides in the last couple weeks is that they were worried by the of the rioters coming into the Capitol, not having gone through security and storming the floor like they did.
Yeah, you and I were on the air live when those images first came in of that scene from the Senate, and I think both of us were left speechless for a moment. Quite extraordinary. Frank Thorpe, thank you for your reporting. I want to bring in our political director and moderator with me. The press, Chuck Todd. Boy, Chuck, what is it say about a division in America? This thing may be, being put to rest tonight, but the feelings are still very strong, and they are out there.
A couple weeks ago on Meet the Press, Lester, I started off and I just simply asked the question, is this the 1850s or the 1950s, talking about the divides in America? And frankly, I was referring to sort of, in the 1950s, we had the Red Scare. Get Joseph McCarthy, but we shut that down, right? We somehow came together and we shut that down as a country. In the 1850s, obviously the divide in this country culminated in a civil war. And so you now look at an event like today and making a comparison to the 1850s is suddenly, no longer hyperbole, which some of us, I think, were accused of over the last few years. The sad thing about all this, Lester, is that, we're all shocked by what we witnessed today. Are we that surprised? We've all been concerned this moment was coming, that we had a president of the United States that was fomenting this, that he had a propaganda machine, frankly, behind him that helped him push this. So I do think this is gut check time. We still have elected leaders in this country, I think, who would, you've heard some people bring up the 25th Amendment. I don't think these are ideas that are just being tossed around. These should be serious conversations. Whether, there's a lot of senators right now locked up with Vice President Pence right now. Because you got to ask yourself, is the president mentally fit at this point and has the temperament to handle the presidency even for the next 13 days? What he did today and its actions as they continue all night tonight have to call those things into question. So these conversations, I think, are taking place and they're real.
And some of those things you mentioned, obviously, very emotional, and many people would have called them alarmists weeks ago. Perhaps not tonight. Presidential historian Michael Beschloss is with us as well. Michael, there's 2 more weeks left. In this presidency. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but where's this going?
It's going in ways that are very ominous, Lester. You know, this is a day I hoped I would never live to see. We saw a terrorist attack on the United States Congress and the United States Capitol, and it was instigated by the President of the United States, who today, at midday, told this big mob, march up Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol and take back our country and stop the counting of the ballots that will lead to an election that he charged was stolen. And once they were with guns and other weapons and committing violence in the Capitol, he made a video in the Rose Garden saying, "We love you and you're very special." We have never seen anything like that in more than 2 centuries of American history. I hope we never do it again, but it has to stop. He's in office for 2 more weeks. We can't live with a possibility that this kind of thing will spread and get worse.
Yeah, we've all seen things today that may make us shudder. Michael, thank you. The question many asking tonight, how did this assault in the Capitol happen? Why wasn't it more secure when Trump supporters have been threatening similar actions for months? Let's go to Tom Costello with that.
For weeks, right-wing online chatter has discussed just this scenario. The president had called for protesters to march on Capitol Hill. Washington's mayor had called out the National Guard to protect the city's streets. Every D.C. police officer was on the job. Today's events were not representation of peaceful protests. Today, what we witnessed was unlawful, riotous behavior. The question tonight, why were Capitol Police prepared for this?
We need to ask questions about what it was or was not designated a national special event, and why the security around it was insufficient.
2,300 officers make up of the White House after the killing of George Floyd. There would have never
anticipated that we would lose